Namaste everyone. Hello, this is Harsha Bhatt. Welcome to Visionary First Step YouTube channel, and today I am going to explain you the topic excretory product and their elimination. I know those who are studying in first PUC, they are more excited when it comes to human physiology because all the topics what they study in the earlier units of biology, it is all related to classification of the organisms. So throughout their first year, they are very eager to learn the human physiology. So this topic, excretory product and their elimination, it is very relevant to our day-to-day life, and we need to learn the basics of how the body organ which helps in excretion of metabolic waste from our body. So without any further delay, let's get started. As the name indicates, excretory products and their elimination. Let us try to understand what and all are the excretory products. So in this topic, we are not only taking the excretory products of human beings, instead we study all the animals starting from invertebrates till the vertebrate most complex organism like human beings, what and all are the excretory products in general, and what and all the structures develop in these organisms for excretion of the waste product. Okay, so let us try to understand what and all the excretory products. When we ingest the food, our body undertake metabolism. In that catabolism, break down the complex food materials and make it simple, and cellular respiration takes place, and that creates some waste materials, which mainly includes ammonia, urea, uric acid, potassium, sodium, chlorine, and then water and carbon dioxide. You know that excess water when we intake, that should be eliminated out from the body. So these are some of the metabolic wastes, or we can say excretory products produced in the body of the living organism. Now these products either fully eliminated or partially eliminated. Okay, but in this topic we are mainly focusing on elimination of nitrogenous waste. Okay, see, in nitrogenous waste, mainly ammonia, urea and uric acid are eliminated. In these three, ammonia, being highly toxic, requires large amount of water for the excretion. So terrestrial organisms, they have not developed a system to excrete the ammonia. So this type of excretion of ammonia is observed in the aquatic organisms. Uric acid, being least toxic, requires very less amount of water for the excretion. Okay, here the process of excreting ammonia in organisms, those organisms are called Ammonotelic organisms. So the common examples are, here you can see bony fishes, then tadpoles of frog. Here one more picture is there. This is the nymph of dragonfly. These are the organisms, they excrete ammonia. As earlier I said, ammonia requires lot of water for excretion. Okay, ammonia is readily soluble in water, and ammonia in ammonium ion form can excreted out through the surface of the body. Here they have mentioned ammonia, as it is readily soluble, is generally excreted by diffusion across the body surface or through the gill surface. That is mainly in the case of fishes. Okay, in the form of ammonium ions. This is again a very important point. Kidney do not play any significant role in its removal. As I said, kidney is basically built for type of excretion where maximum water will be reabsorbed. But here ammonia requires large amount of water for its excretion. That's why basically kidney will not involve in the excretion of ammonia. Terrestrial organisms, they developed a method of excreting nitrogenous waste in the form of urea and uric acid, because it is necessary to conserve water. As they are terrestrial organisms, availability of water will be limited. Okay. Here, mammals, terrestrial amphibians, and some of the aquatic fishes, they developed method of excreting urea, and they are called ureotelic organisms. Okay, ureotelic organisms. Now, ammonia produced as a metabolic waste is now converted to urea in the liver, and then it is transported to the body, and through the body fluids this urea is excreted out in the excretory system of the mammals and other animals. Here you can see some of the picture. This is frog. Their excretory product is urea, and cat, here also excretory product is urea because it is a mammal. Rabbit and shark. So these organisms, they mainly excrete urea. Now, some amount of urea may retained in the kidney matrix. The main reason of maintaining this in the kidney is to maintain the osmolarity. Okay, so maintenance of osmolarity plays very important role in reabsorption of water and electrolytes. Okay, so this is about the ureotelic organisms. Some other organisms, they do not excrete urea and ammonium, and they excrete uric acid. So these are the type of organisms. There is a necessity to retain large amount of water in their body, so they excrete uric acid. Okay, so example you can see here: snake, bird, snails, and insects like cockroach, they excrete uric acid. Some of you might have observed this. Wall lizards and all, they excrete a small pellet like fecal material. At the same time, birds, they excrete paste like excreta. So these are all the uric acid, and uric acid is least toxic, and most of the water is reabsorbed at the time of excretion of uric acid. So they are called uricotelic animals, very important. So for what and all we studied? Ammonotelic organisms which excrete ammonium ions. Then ureotelic organisms, they excrete urea. Then one more type, that is the organism which excrete uric acid, and they are called uricotelic animals. So in this context of the topic, please do remember, you need to remember the definitions and examples. In examination, they may focus on preparing match the following type of questions. At one side, they will give the type of excretory product like ammonia, urea, and uric acid. In column B, they will give the examples. So common examples you can easily match it, but when it comes to specific examples, like here in excretory product as a urea, there are also example of fish, and excretory product as ammonia, there is a example of a fish, but there is a difference. So that you should observe and remember all the possible examples here, which is given in NCERT. So hope you understood what is ammonotelic, ureotelic, and uricotelic organisms. Next, moving on to the next topic. Survey of Animal Kingdom presents a variety of excretory structures. So this is very interesting. Hope you all studied animal kingdom. In that, we study organism from primitive part to complex part. Can you imagine whether all the organisms have a same excretory structures? That may not be possible. Excretory system, the complex excretory system like kidney got evolved. So in primitive organisms, what we can expect is a primitive tubular structure which involve in excretion. Okay. So a simple tubular forms, whereas vertebrates have complex tubular organs called kidney. So starting from invertebrates to the most complex mammals, so this system of excretion got evolved. Okay, so complexity got evolved from primitive to more advanced one. So in that one example is given. Please note this definition. Nephridia or flame cells. This flame cells you already studied in animal kingdom. Platyhelminthes, they have flame cells. Are the excretory structures in Platyhelminthes, flatworms and planaria, rotifers and some annelids and cephalochordate like amphioxus. Learn all these examples, this is important. They have protonephridia or flame cells. Just for your understanding, I just included one diagram here. Observe this structure, a very simple tubular structure meant for excretion of excretory product. Nephridia are primarily concerned with ionic and fluid volume regulation. In the sense, it is mainly for osmoregulation. Okay, so this is about the protonephridia. Now coming to nephridia, see, we are studying from primitive form to the most advanced form. So compared to protonephridia, nephridia is slightly advanced. So tubular excretory structure of earthworms and other annelids, nephridia help to remove the nitrogenous waste and maintain the fluid and ionic balance. Just like the previous study, it is also meant for osmoregulation. Observe here, it may not be very clear for you because it is a diagrammatic representation. This entire part is the tubular nephridia. Actually, in earthworms we study different types of nephridia. So it is the one of the type. This is one more type of excretory structure observed in cockroaches, that is called Malpighian tubules. Just look at this picture. This yellow color hair-like structures are the Malpighian tubules. So in most of the insects, including cockroaches, Malpighian tubules helps in removal of nitrogenous waste and help in osmoregulation. The primary function of any of this excretory structure will remain same. Okay, that is mainly for osmoregulation. So this is observed in prawns. We call it as green glands. Here you can see the picture. This is the front portion of the prawn. Here you can see the green gland. This is also primarily meant for excretion. So here antennal glands or green glands perform the excretory function in crustaceans like prawns. The primary function will remain same. Now coming to human excretory system, this is the most advanced type. Anyway, it is completely related to humans. Okay, we are not taking a generalized study of mammals. Here we will study human excretory system. So here you can see the location of the kidney, structure of the kidney, internal anatomical structure of the kidney. We will go in detail related to the structure of human kidney. Now tell me, how many kidney are present in our body? A pair of kidney. Where they are located actually? They are located just near to the floating ribs in the dorsal surface. Here you can see these are the floating ribs. Here you can see the kidney. And in the third lumbar region of the vertebrae, towards the dorsal side, we observe the location of the kidney. So what and all are the components of human excretory system? It includes pair of kidney, pair of ureter, and one urinary bladder and one urethra. So these are the components of excretory system in humans. Now, what is the color of the kidney? It is reddish brown in color. When you look at this kidney, it is bean shaped. Here you can see the notch. This is called hilum. Very important. This notch is nothing but the hilum. So this is the region where the renal arteries and renal vein, they enter the kidney. And this is the region from which the ureter will come out, and that will connect to the urinary bladder. That means it will carry the urine, concentrated urine. So already I explained the location. This is situated between the levels of last thoracic region, nothing but in the floating ribs, and third lumbar vertebrae close to the dorsal inner wall of the abdominal cavity. Hope you know the difference between thoracic cavity and abdominal cavity. Thoracic cavity and abdominal cavity are separated by a dome-shaped plate-like structure called diaphragm. Now, each kidney of an adult human measures 10 to 12 centimeter in length. So this is the length, 10 to 12 centimeter, 5 to 7 centimeter width, and 2 to 3 centimeter thickness. Later I will show the real picture of the kidney, how it appears when you take the longitudinal section. So weight already here I mentioned, you can see 120 to 150 gram, that is approximate value. So this is the internal structure that we will study in detail in the next slide. Hope this diagrams will help you to understand the concept better. Now see here, this is the real kidney in its longitudinal section. Clearly you can observe the different regions here. I will show you. The peripheral region, this is the cortex, and this little pinkish region, this is the medulla, and this white color region is the renal pelvis. Okay, so these are the three main regions of the kidney. We will study in detail about that here. So when you look at the transverse section, so this region, which is notch-like structure, this is the bean-shaped kidney. Here we observe the connections of renal artery and renal vein. You know that veins, they usually carry contaminated blood or impure blood. So they carry impure blood to the kidney and filtration takes place. After that, filtered blood carried through the renal artery. So hilum region is the region where renal artery and renal veins are connected. And if you observe the structure, as I said, the peripheral region is the cortex. Okay, cortex, can you tell me what is the functional unit of the kidney? That is nephron. There are millions of nephrons in kidney. Those nephrons, their Malpighian body located in the cortical region. Tubular part extends to the medulla region, that is the middle part like this. What happens during excretion? Glomerular filtration produces glomerular filtrate. That glomerular filtrate concentrates and forms the urine. Urine then slowly collected by different tubular part of this and they all open up in the one empty space, large region, that is called renal pelvis. Renal pelvis. Okay, so here in the notch region there is a white color part. Here you can clearly observe this is the renal pelvis. Now here you can see some pyramid shaped structures. These are called renal pyramids. Here also you can see the renal pyramids. Okay, clear compartmentalization you can observe here. These renal pyramids are attached to the renal calyces, or you can say calyx. Though these renal calyces open to the renal pelvis. Okay, this kidney externally covered by a protective layer, and that is called renal capsule. And whatever the urine collected in this renal pelvis passes through the ureter. Okay, so this is about the internal structure of the kidney. And one more thing I wanted to explain here. Between these pyramids, cortex region extends, and that we call it as renal column. In other words, it is also called column of Bertini. So the name Bertini comes from the name of the scientist. While studying the anatomy of the kidney in the 17th century, he identified the regions between the pyramids, and they are named as renal columns, and it is also known as column of Bertini. Now just observe the picture. This is the one nephron. Like this, millions of nephrons are present in the kidney. Okay, so these are the functional units of kidney. If you just recollect the previous topics where the excretory structures are simply primitive tube-like structures, but here millions of tube-like structure forming one complex kidney. Okay, so just observe the diagram, you will get to understand what it is. Each kidney has 1 million complex tubular structures called nephrons, which are the functional units. Each nephron has two parts, that is glomerulus and renal tubulus. Glomerulus is a tuft of capillaries found by the afferent arteriole, a fine branch of renal artery. The blood from the glomerulus is carried away by an efferent arteriole. Let me explain this concept by taking this diagram. Okay, so observe here this part, mainly this part we will focus on. See, this is actually glomerulus. This part is glomerulus. This is afferent arteriole. Here they all form a network-like structure. Okay, this is efferent arteriole. Here in this picture they have not clearly drawn this. This is just a graphical representation, or you can say animated diagram. Actually, afferent arterioles are broader compared to efferent arterioles, so that in the glomerulus the flow of blood can exert some amount of pressure. The blood can be filtered in the Bowman's capsule. Okay, so that is the intention. Now here glomerulus is covered by Bowman's capsule, and then the extended part of the Bowman's capsule includes the tubular part, that includes proximal convoluted tubule. It is again highly coiled. The reason, it increases the surface area for absorption of water. As it extends down, the lumen of the tubule will become narrow, and that will forms the descending limb of Henle, and again you observe ascending limb of Henle. So this part is the ascending limb of Henle, and the last part of the tubule, that is distal convoluted tubule. Again it is highly coiled. The reason is to increase the surface area for reabsorption. So these distal convoluted tubule are connected to a broader tubules, and these tubules are connected to more number of nephrons, and they are called collecting ducts, and these collecting ducts then open to broader tubules and finally open to renal pelvis. Okay, so this is about the first part, that is glomerulus. Now I said afferent arteriole and efferent arteriole. What is their structural difference? Now here you observe this efferent arteriole, further it will form a network like structure around the tubular part of the nephron, and they are called vasa recta. This network of blood capillaries around the tubular part of the nephron forms descending vasa recta and ascending vasa recta. Okay, so understanding of arrangement of blood vessels around this tubular part of the nephron is very important. Only by understanding this we will understand the complex part of excretion, that is counter current mechanism. Okay, so it is better to know how this vasa recta is formed. Just observe, this is the renal artery, carries oxygenated blood. This renal artery enters the Bowman's capsule as afferent arteriole, and here it is glomerulus forming a network like structure, and then form efferent arteriole. This efferent arteriole, they coil around the tubular part of the nephron forming vasa recta. In that also, the one part we call it as descending vasa recta, another part we call it as ascending vasa recta, just like descending limb of Henle and ascending limb of Henle. The flow of blood and flow of glomerular filtrate is in opposite direction. Okay, later that will I explain. It is just a same thing. I will go through it. The renal tubule begins with the double-walled cup-like structure called Bowman's capsule. So they are explaining about this part. It is cup-shaped, covering the glomerulus. That is called Bowman's capsule, which encloses the glomerulus. Glomerulus along with Bowman's capsule is called Malpighian body or renal corpuscles. This name is very important. Glomerulus with the Bowman's capsule is called Malpighian body or renal corpuscles. The tubule continues further to form highly coiled network, that is proximal convoluted tubule. I already explained why they are highly coiled. The reason is to increase the surface area for reabsorption, because 60 to 70% or sometimes more than that water will be reabsorbed in the region of the proximal convoluted tubule. A hairpin shaped Henle's loop is next part of the tubule, which has descending and ascending limb. Here you can see this is the hairpin bend like structures. So this is the descending limb of Henle, this is the ascending limb of Henle. The ascending limb of Henle continues as another highly coiled tubular region called distal convoluted tubule. Proximal means proximal to the Bowman's capsule. Distal means it is distal to the Bowman's capsule. That means at the end part. Okay, so this distal convoluted tubule is also highly coiled. The reason is again it helps in reabsorption of electrolytes and some amount of water. So the DCT of many nephrons open into a straight tube called collecting duct, many of which converge and open into a renal pelvis through medullary pyramids in the calyces. Urine formation. Urine formation involves three main processes, namely glomerular filtration, reabsorption and secretion. Okay. Now the first step in urine formation, that is glomerular filtration. So where it takes place? Glomerular filtration takes place with the help of glomerulus. Now glomerulus filters on an average of 1100 to 1200 ml of blood. Okay, so which is around 1/5 of the blood which is coming out from the each ventricle during the blood circulation. Okay, so or blood pumping, and that blood passes through the glomerulus, forms the glomerular filtrate. Now let us see how the arrangements are there in nephron, which helps in glomerular filtration. This is the network of blood capillary, nothing but the glomerulus. Now it is present or situated inside the cup-shaped Bowman's capsule. Now here we can differentiate three regions. One is endothelium of the glomerulus, and then epithelium of the Bowman's capsule, and in between there is a space that is nothing but the basement membrane. Now what happens actually? Glomerular blood pressure, as we discussed, the afferent arteriole is comparatively larger than efferent arteriole. So movement of blood in this part creates blood pressure. Because of this blood pressure, now blood passes through the endothelium of the blood capillaries, and then next to the basement region, and then to the Bowman's capsule epithelium. Now here there is one special arrangement. In Bowman's capsule epithelium, podocyte cells are present. They are arranged in an intricate manner so that which allow the body fluid to pass through it. Okay, almost all the content will pass through it except proteins and RBC cells. Remaining cells, they pass through the Bowman's capsule, and that will forms the glomerular filtrate. This is very important. Okay. That is why it is called ultrafiltration. Now here you can see the amount of the filtrate formed by the kidney per minute is called glomerular filtration rate. See, to identify any rate, we require time. So here what they have given, the amount of filtrate formed by the kidney, you can take it for per minute. Okay, so that is considered as a glomerular filtration rate. So how much it is actually? 125 ml per minute. Okay, even though 1100 to 1200 ml of blood passes through the kidney, in that how much amount of glomerular filtrate is formed? 125 ml glomerular filtrate is formed. Now if we calculate this amount of glomerular filtrate formed in a day, it will comes around 180 liters per day. Now we wonder, if that much amount of glomerular filtrate is formed, how come we urinate very little amount of urea, right? So the answer is, the first step is glomerular filtration, second step is reabsorption. Whatever the glomerular filtrate is formed, that is around 180 liter per day, out of that 1 to 1.5 liter of urine is excreted out. That means 99% of the glomerular filtrate will be reabsorbed. So where this reabsorption process takes place, that is mainly in the tubular part of the nephron. Now there is one important factor here. What happens when glomerular filtration rate falls? Say for example, a person is drinking less amount of water, his body fluid content is less now, So there is a high chance that glomerular filtration rate fall off. So at that time, it is very interesting. Observe here, this is the region, this is afferent arteriole, and this is the part of distal convoluted tubule, and they are together, and that region we call it as juxtaglomerular apparatus. So what is the importance of this juxtaglomerular apparatus? These cells are sensitive to change in the glomerular filtration rate. If glomerular filtration rate fall, then these cells get activated and they start to produce renin. This renin then passed on to the body fluid and it activates some other angiotensinogen. Later we will discuss that. That will be converted to angiotensinogen 2, angiotensinogen 1 and 2, and that will help in normalizing the glomerular filtration rate. That is important. So JG cells helps in regaining the glomerular filtration rate when there is a fall in the glomerular filtration. Okay. Now here I already told 99% will be reabsorbed. Now tubular epithelial cells in different segment of the nephron perform this either by active or passive mechanism. I said 99% of the body glomerular filtrate will be reabsorbed. How they are reabsorbed? Simply by passive method without expending any energy or expenditure of any energy, or it requires energy. Of course, some of the reabsorption requires energy and some do not. So here if you observe, glucose, amino acid, sodium in the filtrate are reabsorbed actively. That means it requires expenditure of energy in the form of ATP. Then whereas the nitrogenous waste like urea absorbed by passive transport. Now you may ask me why urea will be reabsorbed. Of course urea has to be excreted out. But the reason to reabsorb a small amount of urea is it has to maintain high milliosmolarity in the medulla region of the kidney. So that is the reason a small amount of urea will be reabsorbed. Reabsorption of water also occurs passively in the initial segment of the nephron. This statement is very important. That means the total reabsorption of water throughout the tubular part of the nephron is not passive. Initial part, that means proximal convoluted tubule and the descending limb of Henle, whatever the water is reabsorbed, that is by passive method. Okay, that means whenever there is a stress in our body, water will be reabsorbed even from the distal convoluted tubule and the collecting duct. During urine formation, tubular cells secrete substance like H plus and K plus and ammonia into the filtrate. Okay, so this is called tubular secretion, and this is very important for maintenance of ionic and acid base balance of the body fluid. So this is where our kidney plays very vital role. Suppose these ionic elements, if they are present in our blood will become more acidic. That has to be eliminated out, and that takes place by tubular secretion. Now coming to functions of the tubules. Now tell me, what and all the tubules are there in the nephron? Of course, proximal convoluted tubule, then Henle's loop, in that descending limb of Henle, ascending limb of Henle, and distal convoluted tubule and collecting duct. So these are the tubular part of the nephron. Now, which part of the nephron, what they contribute, that is what we study under functions of the tubules. So let us start with the proximal convoluted tubule. By learning this one diagram, you can learn the whole explanation of this. This is very simple, okay? Now, if you observe here, this is the proximal convoluted region. Here, right? See, what and all are reabsorbed? Here bicarbonates are reabsorbed, sodium chloride are reabsorbed, water is reabsorbed, nutrient is reabsorbed, and potassium is reabsorbed. That means around 70 to 80% of the electrolytes and water are reabsorbed in this segment. So which will help that? That is because of cuboidal brush border epithelium, which will increases the surface area for reabsorption. Please remember this. This is very important structure present in proximal convoluted tubule, that is cuboidal brush border epithelium cell, that increases the surface area for reabsorption. Then PCT, that is proximal convoluted tubule, helps to maintain the pH and ionic balance of the body fluid by selective secretion of hydrogen ions and ammonia. Here you can see hydrogen ions and ammonia are secreted, which mainly helps in maintenance of ionic balance in the blood. So just by looking at this diagram, you can explain the whole concept related to functions of the tubule. I hope this concept is clear. Now coming to next part. Next to proximal convoluted tubule is Henle's loop. Now this is the Henle's loop. Here this is descending limb of Henle and this is the ascending limb of Henle. Here you can see the hairpin wind structure. And we also studied one more diagram where the parallel vasa recta is present. That is also very important here. Okay. Now this first part, descending limb of Henle, mainly involve in reabsorption of water, and they are impermeable to electrolytes. The reason for this is, as the glomerular filtrate moves down, water will be reabsorbed. That means solute concentration in the glomerular filtrate goes on increases. So as it reaches the medulla region of the kidney, the filtrate will become highly concentrated. Okay, so again filtrate starts to move upward in the ascending limb of Henle. Now this ascending limb of Henle is impermeable to water and permeable to NaCl, like electrolytes. So these NaCl are excreted out, or in the sense reabsorbed, not excreted out, it is reabsorbed. Now as it moves upward to the distal convoluted tubule towards the cortex region, the osmolarity will reach to 300 milliosmolarity per liter. So that is why the electrolytes are reabsorbed here. So this is how ascending limb of Henle and descending limb of Henle helps in absorption or reabsorption of water and NaCl. Here the same thing is given. Reabsorption is minimum in its ascending limb. Which reabsorption? Water reabsorption. However, this region plays a significant role in maintenance of high osmolarity of the medullary interstitium fluid. The descending limb of Henle is permeable to water but almost impermeable to electrolyte. This concentrates the filtrate as it moves down. So as it comes to medulla region, inner medulla region, the concentrate will increase. Ascending limb of Henle is impermeable to water but allow the transport of electrolytes actively or passively. Therefore, as the concentrated filtrate pass upward, it gets diluted due to the passage of electrolyte to the medullary region. So whatever the glomerular filtrate which is entering the medulla region maintains high osmolarity. And the same glomerular filtrate again when it come back to the cortex region, it should maintain the osmolarity of the blood. That's why the most of the electrolytes are reabsorbed to maintain the medulla region with the high osmolarity. Okay, so this is about the Henle's loop. Now coming to distal convoluted tubule, here you can see this part, we call it as distal convoluted tubule. Now what is the speciality of this? Again, conditional reabsorption of sodium and water takes place in this segment. Why they have given conditional reabsorption? Because whenever body is in high requirement of water, at that time sodium chloride and water will be reabsorbed, and DCT also capable of reabsorption of bicarbonates and selective secretion of hydrogen, potassium and ammonia ions, again to maintain the ionic balance of the blood. This is very important process, secretion, tubular secretion of hydrogen, potassium and ammonia. Now after this, once the sodium chloride, water and bicarbonates are reabsorbed, now concentrated filtrate passes through the last part of the tubule, that is collecting duct. Let us see what happens in the collecting duct. Now this is a long duct, extends from cortex of the kidney to the inner part of the medulla. Here you can see this is the cortex region. Part is present in the cortex region, some part is present in the medulla region. Large amount of water could be reabsorbed from this region to produce a concentrated urine. This segment allows passage of small amount of urea into the medullary region. Here they have shown a small amount of urea back to the medullary region. Why they will be sent back? Because to maintain or to keep the osmolarity high. Okay, so it also plays a role in the maintenance of pH and ionic balance of the blood by selective secretion of H plus and K plus ion. Even collecting ducts, they play a very important role in excretion of H plus and K plus ions, that will directly helps in maintenance of electrolyte balance in the blood. So this is how the tubular part of the kidney helps in excretion of excretory product like urea and concentrating it, and also helpful in maintenance of ionic balance in the blood, as well helps in reabsorption of water, nutrients and bicarbonates from the glomerular filtrate. Next part is very interesting actually, counter current mechanism. Whatever we have studied, the glomerular filtrate formed 99% will be reabsorbed. Now the question comes, how it is reabsorbed? Who is carrying this back to the blood, right? So this is a very interesting thing. We already studied while studying the structure of nephron. The vasa recta lie parallel to ascending and descending limb of Henle. Okay, so glomerular filtrate, they move in one direction and the blood moves in the vasa recta is exactly opposite to that. Now how it is present actually, here you can see this is the proximal convoluted tubule, descending limb of Henle, ascending limb of Henle, distal convoluted tubule. Here you can see the descending vasa recta, hairpin loop, and here it is ascending vasa recta. The movement of fluid inside the tubular part of the nephron in one direction, movement of blood inside the vasa recta in opposite direction. So this is what we call it as counter current mechanism. So this is the diagram which is given in the NCERT textbook. you have to study this. The only reason to give this diagram is to understand what happens to the reabsorbed water and what happens to the reabsorbed sodium, chlorine and potassium. Okay, here you can see the first part in the descending limb of Henle. Already we studied descending limb of Henle is permeable to water and impermeable to electrolytes. Now if you see the two regions, please do observe here, this is very important. This is the cortex region and here it is outer medulla and this is inner medulla. Okay, now the molarity. The cortex has 300 milliosmolarity, outer medulla has around 600 milliosmolarity and inner to that it is around 900 milliosmolarity and innermost region consisting of 1200 milliosmolarity. That is the concentration of the solute which is present in the cortical region, outer medulla region and the inner medulla region. Now why this concentration of solute is present? Because it helps in reabsorption of water and other electrolytes and nutrients. Now as the glomerular filtrate move down, now in the descending limb of Henle, it is permeable to water. So whatever the water is reabsorbed, now that will be passed on to ascending vasa recta. This is ascending vasa recta. Because here the solution inside the vasa recta is highly concentrated. This solution is moving towards the cortex where it has 300 milliosmolarity. So water moving from descending limb of Henle to the ascending vasa recta dilute it. Okay, similarly what happens because of the movement of water from descending limb to the outside, now the glomerular filtrate inside the descending limb will become concentrated as it moves towards the medulla region, and as it starts upward in the ascending limb of Henle, now this is impermeable and permeable for the movement of electrolytes like sodium, potassium and chlorine. Now what happens? Slowly the glomerular filtrate in the ascending limb of Henle will become dilute. Okay, so whatever the electrolyte which is reabsorbed will move towards the descending vasa recta. Why? Because fluid inside the descending vasa recta is moving towards the medulla region, that will become more concentrated. In both the case, whether it is a glomerular filtrate or it is the blood, when it reaches the cortex region, it should maintain 300 milliosmolarity. So this is how movement of water from descending limb of Henle to the ascending vasa recta and movement of electrolytes from ascending limb of Henle to the descending vasa recta acts as a counter current and helps in reabsorption of water and other electrolytes. So same thing is given here. Mammals have ability to produce concentrated urine. So this is the reason why water is reabsorbed and concentrated urine is formed. Henle's loop and vasa recta play a significant role in this, and the flow of filtrate in the two limbs of Henle is a opposite direction and thus forms the counter current. The flow of blood through the two limbs of vasa recta is also in counter current pattern. The proximity between the Henle's loop and vasa recta as well as the counter current in the help of in them help in maintaining and increasing osmolarity towards the inner medullary interstitium, that is from 300 to 1200 milliosmolarity. Already I explained it. So same thing I explained. This gradient mainly caused by NaCl and urea. NaCl is transported by the ascending limb of Henle which is exchanged with the descending limb of vasa recta. Here you can see here NaCl is exchanged, and that is exchanged with the descending limb of vasa recta. NaCl is returned to the interstitium by the ascending portion of the vasa recta. Here again it is returned to the interstitium only, because interstitium need to maintain high osmolarity. Similarly, small amount of urea enters the thin segment of the ascending limb of Henle loop, which is transported back to the interstitium by the collecting duct. That mechanism already we studied, how the small amount of urea will be cycled back in ascending limb of Henle and collecting duct. Okay. Now, here what it explains, actually the description of transport of substance facilitated by special arrangement of Henle's loop and vasa recta is called countercurrent mechanism. This mechanism helps to maintain the concentration gradient in the medullary interstitium. Presence of such interstitial gradient helps the easy passage of water from the collecting tubule, thereby concentrating the filtrate. Human kidney can produce urine nearly 4 times concentrated initial filtrate. This is very important. Human kidney can produce the urine which is 4 times concentrated than the initial filtrate. Now the next part is regulation of kidney function. Functioning of the kidney are effectively monitored by hormonal feedback mechanism. Okay, especially hypothalamus, juxtaglomerular apparatus, and to certain extent heart. Now what happens if there is a change in glomerular filtration rate? Then suppose the glomerular filtration rate is low, at that time receptors in our body, osmoreceptors in our body sense this low glomerular filtration rate, and that signal will reaches the hypothalamus, which is present in the brain, and stimulate this hypothalamus to secrete the hormone called antidiuretic hormone. Now this antidiuretic hormone, when it is released, it is passed on to neurohypophysis, and neurohypophysis in response to that produces the vasopressin. Now what happens when vasopressin is released? So it acts on the tubular part of the nephron and helps in reabsorption of water and other nutrients and electrolytes. Okay, so antidiuretic hormone, as the name indicates, diuresis means excess water will be lost in the urine. Antidiuretic means now the concentrated urine will be excreted out. So ADH facilitates water reabsorption from the later part of the tube, that is nothing but the collecting duct, and increased in body fluid volume can switch off the osmoreceptors and suppresses the ADH release to complete the feedback mechanism. This is very important, because once ADH is released, once vasopressin is released, tubular part of the nephron starts to reabsorb the water. If this continues, then how can we stop this, right? So this will be stopped when increase in body fluid volume can switch off the osmoreceptors. The same osmoreceptor, when it sensed the low glomerular filtrate and stimulate the neurohypophysis to secrete vasopressin, same osmoreceptor, when body fluid is high, they send the signal to stop secretion of ADH, antidiuretic hormone. So ADH can also affect the kidney function by constrictory effects on blood vessels. So as the blood vessel become constrict, glomerular filtration rate increases. This causes an increase in blood pressure, and increase in blood pressure can increase as the glomerular flow and thereby glomerular filtration rate. So this is one chart. Here you can see osmoreceptors in the hypothalamus. Now hypothalamus, so by thirst, here you can see when there is a low glomerular filtration rate, they sense it and produces the ADH. Now ADH increases the reabsorption of water. Okay, so when the blood body fluid is more because of reabsorption, again the same osmoreceptors, they allow the feedback mechanism by stopping the production of ADH. Okay, so here one more is there, this I will explain now. That is one method of regaining the glomerular filtration rate to its normal glomerular filtrate. Now already we explained this actually, juxtaglomerular apparatus, where it is present actually afferent arteriole and distal convoluted tubule, they make contact in one region and that forms the juxtaglomerular apparatus. Now these juxtaglomerular apparatus cells are sensitive to the low glomerular filtration rate. Once they sense the low glomerular filtration rate, they start to produce the renin. Now this renin are transported to blood. In the blood, renin acts on angiotensinogen and convert that to angiotensin 1. Now angiotensin 1 converted to angiotensin 2. Angiotensin 2 acts as a very strong vasoconstrictor. Because of that, the blood vessels will be constricted and blood pressure will increase, and that ultimately increases the glomerular filtration rate. That means that will normalizes the glomerular filtration rate. Okay, so then what happens? Angiotensin 2 is also activates the adrenal cortex to release the aldosterone. Aldosterone causes reabsorption of sodium and water from the distal part of the tubule. This also leads to increase in the blood pressure and glomerular filtration rate. This complex mechanism is generally known as renin-angiotensin mechanism. An increase in blood flow to the atria of the heart can cause the release of atrial natriuretic factor. This is very important. So this mechanism should have feedback mechanism, right? So because of reabsorption of water and sodium, the volume of the blood in heart will increase. So heart in response to that start to produce atrial natriuretic factor, and again which helps in vasodilation and normalizing the pressure which is exerted on the glomerulus in the filtration of urine. Okay, or you can say glomerular filtration rate. ANF cause vasodilation, dilation of blood vessels, and thereby decreases the blood pressure, and ANF mechanism therefore acts as a check on renin-angiotensin mechanism. Now the last part of the excretory product and their elimination, that is micturition. What is actually micturition? So far we studied how glomerular filtrate is formed and how this glomerular filtrate undergo concentration, and how this concentrated filtrate will become urea. Now what happens to this urea? Now that will pass on through ureter and reaches the urinary bladder. Now urinary bladder collect the urea coming from both the kidney. Once the urinary bladder is filled, it sends the signal to central nervous system. The smooth muscles which is present in the wall of the urinary bladder helps in contraction, and that will helps in what we can say the excretion of urea is under control. Okay, it is not without control, it is under the control. So whenever there is a signal from central nervous system, the smooth muscles helps in excretion of urea through urethra. So process of release of urine is called micturition, and the neural mechanism causing it is called Micturition reflex. An adult human excrete on an average of 1 to 1.5 liters, is already we studied. Urine formed is slightly yellow colored. This is the characteristic feature of urine, slightly yellow colored watery fluid which is slightly acidic. The pH is around 6 and has characteristic odor. On an average of 25 to 30 gram of urea. Sometimes it will be asked in your competitive exam. 25 to 30 gram of urea is excreted per day. So various conditions can affect the characteristics of the urine. In that, suppose the more amount of glucose is excreted, then condition is called glycosuria. If more amount of ketones are excreted, then it is called ketonuria. These two conditions are observed when a person is suffering from diabetes mellitus. Now, role of other organs in excretion. Do you think any other part of our body help in excretion? Of course, yes. So the answer is lungs, liver and skin also involved in the excretion. Now tell me how lungs involve in excretion. Lungs mainly help in excretion of carbon dioxide, that is around 200 ml per minute. How this liver helps in excretion? Now liver is the largest gland of our body, this is important. Secretes bile containing substances like bilirubin, biliverdin, cholesterol, degraded steroid hormones, vitamins and drugs. So these are mostly excreted out through the fecal material. And sweat and sebaceous glands. So skin helps in excretion of sweat. Here sebaceous gland play very important role. Sweat glands is secreting watery fluid containing NaCl and small amount of urea lactic acid. You know how this lactic acid is formed during the muscular movement. If oxygen is less, because of anaerobic respiration, lactic acid will be formed and that will be eliminated through the skin. Though the primary function of the sweat is to facilitate cooling effect, the primary function is to generate cooling effect on the surface of the body, but here sebaceous gland eliminates certain substances like sterols, hydrocarbons and wax. Okay, so this secretion provides protective oily covering for the skin. A small amount of nitrogenous waste is eliminated even through the saliva. This is how other organisms they involve in excretion of certain substances. Now, disorders of excretory system. Already we studied actually what you can say, diabetes mellitus is one of the disorder of excretory system. The same thing is given here. Malfunctioning of the kidney can lead to accumulation of urea in the blood, and that is what we call it as uremia. In such type of uremic uremia patients, hemodialysis is compulsory. So what they will do, they search for a particular artery and vein, they graft it, and from that they connect the tube to a dialyzer. In dialyzer, so many cellophanes are present, and these are the tube like structures through which body fluid will pass on, and surrounding that the fluids are present which contain all the type of electrolytes required for our body, and there is no nitrogenous waste in that fluid. Whenever our body fluid pass through it, nitrogenous waste simply passively they move out, and required electrolytes for body fluid will move in, and once it passes completely to all the cellophane tubes, and one more tube will be connected to your artery and vein graft, and through which the clean body fluid will enter your body. So this technique of filtering the body fluid by hemodialysis is a boon for patients who are suffering from diabetes. Okay, so their body starts to accumulate urea that can be easily avoided by hemodialyzer. Here you can see this is the hemodialysis unit. The same thing I explained here. Suppose it is acute renal failure, your kidney is completely not for functioning. At that time, what we can do is the only solution is kidney transplantation. For kidney transplantation, one has to find a close relative, otherwise there is a high chance of rejection. You all know our body has autoimmune system. It can identify in our immune system, it can identify the foreign body and it can destroy it. So there is high chance that if the kidney is taken from unrelated person, the organ will be rejected by our body. So it is preferable to have a close relation for kidney transplantation. Okay. Now, another two types of disorders are there. One is renal calculi. This is nothing but the kidney stone, mainly because of the accumulation of oxalates. One more type is glomerular nephritis. Here, glomerular part of the kidney will be inflamed. That means it is not functionable. With this, we completed the topic excretory product and their elimination. Hope this video will help you to understand the topic for theory exam as well as NEET exam. Thank you.